Hey, what's going on? Arden, Zwelling, and Ben Nicholson-Smith here from at the letters at sportsnet.ca. And we are live on YouTube and on Facebook to set up the Toronto Blue Jays wildcard series, Tampa Bay Rays, which starts tomorrow, September 29th in St. Pete. 3 games, winner take all at the Trop. Thanks so much for tuning in. We want to hear from you throughout our broadcast here tonight. You can leave comments on YouTube or on Facebook, and our producer, Graham Campbell, will be there funneling them my way, and Ben and I will respond to them throughout the broadcast here. So please do get your questions in. We really want to hear from you. We're also going to have special appearances from our colleague, Shai Davidi, who joined me in interviewing Ryan Borucki. He's going to be joining us later on in the program. Blue Jays left-handed reliever who's probably going to have a pretty big role to play in this series against the Rays. Also, Joe Siddall, who's going to be on the broadcast on Sportsnet with Buck Martinez. He's going to join us. He's going to break down some of the finer points of catching, what he's seen from Alejandro Kirk so far, and some under the radar tactical things that might come to play in this series. Also want to remind you to please subscribe to Sportsnet's YouTube channel. Click subscribe, turn on your notifications. We're going to have content for you on YouTube throughout the Blue Jays run, which may just be this week or maybe even longer than that, depending on how things go, and plenty of MLB commentary, reaction, analysis, all on Sportsnet's YouTube channel. So please do click subscribe. All right, Ben, let's get to it. Let's get to the topic of the day. Everybody's talking about it. We've been speculating about it for weeks. The way our jobs work is we talk to Charlie Montoyo every day on a Zoom call, and we say, who's pitching? Who's pitching tomorrow? Who's pitching the day after that? What are your plans? Who are you going to throw? And most of the time, the answer is, we'll see. It depends. So Charlie, when he sat down with us this afternoon from the Trop for his media availability ahead of tomorrow's game 1, knew exactly what the first question was going to be. And Ben, you were the one to ask it.
I'm wondering what your starting pitching plans are.
I lost my house. I thought that was going to be the first question. So it'll be Shoemaker, Ryu, and Walker. Okay.
And what went into the decision to have Shoemaker start game 1 and Ryu start game 2?
Yeah, in a 3-game series, the goal is to win 2 of them, so putting our ace in the middle makes sense to us for several reasons. So plus our bullpen's fully rested, and, we said we were going to be creative from the beginning. And that's one of the reasons how we got here, being creative. And to be one of the best teams in baseball, we're going to have to be creative. Also, when you look at their starters, they all got the extra days off because they clinched before we did. So because we couldn't clinch as soon as they did, we're also giving our ace an extra day off. So we're actually doing the same thing they're doing, except, our ace is pitching in the second game.
There you have it. Matt Shoemaker in game 1, not Hyun-Jin Ryu. He's going to pitch in game 2. If there is a game 3, it's going to be Taijuan Walker. Ben, we had been speculating about this possibility for quite some time. We had been discussing it. We had been writing about it. But now here it is. It has come to life. It has materialized. What were your initial thoughts as you heard that answer from Charlie Montoyo?
I'd say mild surprise. Like, I wasn't really surprised because, like you said, it was a possibility that we had started wondering about as recently as, I'm going to say Saturday, when Shoemaker was supposed to start, and then he didn't start. So you start wondering, what are they trying to set themselves up for here? And we heard, I think it was Friday night, that Ryu hadn't felt great coming out of his start. He feels fine, apparently, but he was a little bit sore, to borrow Charlie Montoyo's words. And so they wanted to give him a little bit of extra rest. So I wouldn't say I was totally shocked. I was a little bit surprised. But of all the possibilities that we had considered, I mean, this was something that was on our radar.
I love it, Ben. I love it. I couldn't love it more. Not because I particularly care about the outcome of this series or whether the Blue Jays are going to win or lose, but because it's different. But because it's innovative and it's novel. It's something we haven't seen before. I mean, this entire 60-game season has been strange and novel. And the Blue Jays' approach to the way they deploy their pitching staff has been anything but customary and anything but traditional. Blue Jays starters pitched less than half of the team's innings this season. Like, think about that. Typically, 10 years ago, you would think a Major League Baseball rotation is built of 5 starting pitchers who all throw 6 to 7 innings, 100 pitches plus every 5 days, and you just keep turning them around and on the wheel goes, and eventually they end up pitching somewhere between, I don't know, 60 and 70% of the club's innings. Blue Jays got less than 50% of the innings from starters. They were throwing out Thomas Hatch and Ryan Borucki and Anthony Kay, converted starters to chew up innings in the middle of games. They rarely let a starter not named Hyun-Jin Ryu get into a third trip through the lineup. Once Ken Giles went down to injury, Charlie Montoyo essentially did not have a closer. There were times when we would see Anthony Bass in that role. There were times when we'd see Jordan Romano. There were times when we'd see Rafael Dolis. He just looked for the leverage and waited for it to materialize and used his best arm in that leverage, which is the way it should be. There's no guarantee that there's going to be a save opportunity in the 9th inning, and we shouldn't be deploying pitching staffs to kowtow to these antiquated stats. If the leverage spot comes in the 4th or 5th inning or the 6th inning, use your guy who's going to get you out of that situation. So I just love getting to watch this science experiment play out in this 3-game series, just as I have been watching these strategies play out throughout the season with the Blue Jays. And I'm fascinated to see what happens.
It's super interesting. It's super interesting. And it is a little bit different. I think, all things being equal, if Ryu had been feeling great coming out of that start against the Yankees where he threw 100 pitches, Jays clinched, if he had been feeling great, I still think you would want Ryu in game 1, if only because you want to start the series on a strong note, even in the situation that you're advancing, right? You'd rather have him pitch a game 1 of the LDS as opposed to a game 2. You want to get more Ryu, and you accomplish that by having him pitch sooner and not waiting. So I think all things being equal, that's where at least I would see things going. But look, he wasn't, according to that information, he didn't come out of that start feeling amazing. We've seen his strikeout to walk numbers improve in the situations where he has a little bit more rest. So, the ERA is spectacular on 4 days, on 5 days. He's had an amazing season, and he would have been good on 4 days. I believe that. But if you think you can get him a little bit more effective by giving him that extra day, I mean, game 2 matters too, right? Game 2 is a game that's either a win or go home game, or it's a potential clincher.
Well, this is nothing new. Like you said, Hyun-Jin Ryu has made 80 starts since the beginning of, I'm trying to remember the numbers. I was just looking up as I was filing to sportsnet.ca about this. I think it was since the start of 2018. Either way, in his last 80 starts, half of them have come on 5 days rest. 21 of them have come on 4 days rest. So actually the norm for Hyun-Jin Ryu is pitching on 5 days rest. And that is with 2 different organizations, Los Angeles Dodgers and the Toronto Blue Jays. So it is safe to assume that there is a reason for that. And I don't know if that is Hyun-Jin Ryu's preference. I don't know if that is 2 separate training staffs, both looking at the measures of fatigue and recovery and endurance for him, and both arriving at the conclusion that this is better for him, and this is, what is going to put him in the best possible position to pitch deep into a game and to be the best Hyun-Jin Ryu he can be. I don't know if it's just the fact that his numbers this season are better with more rest than without, but clearly you have 2 isolated enterprises here who have arrived at that conclusion. That is what's best for him. And I think that if this was a 5-game series or a 7-game series, you absolutely start Hyun-Jin Ryu in game 1 because you want him coming back, right? You want him in a 5-game series going back for, depending on where the off day is, game 4, game 5. In a 7-game series, you want the potential of him making 2 starts, then maybe coming out of your bullpen in a game 7. But it's not that. It's a 3-game series. You're only going to get to throw him once. Game 2 is going to be an elimination game regardless of what happens in game 1. So either you are going to be trying to extinguish the Tampa Bay Rays and not let them back into a series, or your back's going to be up against a wall and you're going to be trying to force a game 3. So either way, it's a massive leverage moment in the series. I can totally see the Blue Jays thinking in this. But I can also see the thinking that game 1 is hella important in a 3-game series, because if you go down by 1 game, you look at the record for teams in the wild card era in 5 and 7 game series, the team that wins the first game has a 720 winning percentage. So winning the first game is critical, particularly considering how good the Tampa Bay Rays are. So do you think that game 1 and game 2 are just as important, or do you think that one is more important than the other?
So I've been wondering this question. I think that they are very close in importance. I do think that game one is more important because if you play and win game one, then you don't have to act with desperation in game two. So even in the scenario that you end up splitting those two games, the team that wasn't playing desperate in game two probably emerges in game three in a better state, right? Their bullpen is less taxed. They've probably arrived there with their roster more or less intact. So I think also it gives you the opportunity in game two to try to finish the other team off, which is great. You want to have that opportunity. So I still think game one is more important than game two, but I don't think it's a huge margin. Like I think it's like if one is, like one's a 53% and one's a 47. Like I think they're pretty close.
I think that's the way the Blue Jays looked at it as well. I almost feel like they're looking at those like first two games as like one body of water that they're trying to kind of swim through. How do you feel about the decision of Shoemaker starting game one over Taijuan Walker starting game one? The Blue Jays did, a pretty crafty thing down the stretch there in getting Walker out of his most recent start early, and also like not having Matt Shoemaker make a start at all and having him throw a bullpen in a side session so that they would have all three options, Ryu, Walker, and Shoemaker, available for game one. So depending on opponent and depending on form and how they were feeling, they could have gone in many different directions. They went with Shoemaker for the Rays. How do you feel about that decision?
It's interesting. I think, and I understand there are a lot of fans, I presume, who are watching, and there's certainly who are responding to me on Twitter and saying, well, why would you not, if you have Taijuan Walker, who had this 1-something ERA with the Blue Jays, why would you not use him, even if it's just down to him or Shoemaker? And I understand that, but at the same time, those innings have been pitched. They're over with. They assure the Blue Jays of nothing going forward. So what they have to do is they have to make the best call with the options that they have in front of them right now. And if we're looking at Taijuan Walker, both in 2020 and for his career, he's someone who does get hit hard by left-handed hitters. And the Rays have a ton of left-handed hitters. So I don't know that matchup really favors Walker. Now, I think if the Blue Jays have been playing, let's say a team like the Houston Astros that has a lot of right-handed hitters, well, then maybe that would be Taijuan Walker. But they're not. They're playing the Rays. And I think that probably got in the way of Taijuan Walker being a priority arm over Shoemaker.
Here's the thing about the Rays. They're good against everybody, right? So like some of the left-right stuff. So you could look at like a Brandon Lau and Ji-Man Choi and like Yoshi Tsutsugo and be like, yeah, they got some tough, left-handed bats. Okay, what about Yandy Diaz? What about Willie Adames? What about Randy Arozarena, who's been like great for them filling in for Joey Wendell? They are good on either side of the platoon. The thing that I like about Shoemaker starting game one is that, and like this is kind of like the paradigm shift a lot of people have to have with it. He's starting, but he's really just beginning.
Yeah.
Matt Shoemaker's going to throw 2 to 3 innings.
Oh yeah, he's not seeing the fifth.
Right?
No way.
There's no chance of a third trip through the order. Yeah. If Matt Shoemaker is still pitching in the 4th or 5th inning of this game, things have gone extremely well.
Oh, exactly. That means the Jays are up like 12-0.
Or it means he is cruising and he is like working a perfect game and, averaging 2 to 3 pitches per plate appearance.
Even then, they're pulling. Even if he has a perfect game, they're pulling him. There's no question.
So either way, things are going extremely well if he's there in the 4th or the 5th. Yeah. I think Matt Shoemaker is out there to air it out for like 8 to 9 outs, much like he did against the New York Yankees last week when he was like all of a sudden like 96 miles an hour with his fastball, throwing harder. And then after him, I think Robbie Ray is going to enter this game. And I wrote this morning about how important Robbie Ray is in this series. I think he is so crucial to what the Blue Jays are trying to do. And I think Matt Shoemaker takes that first trip through the lineup, maybe that first trip and a half. Then Robbie Ray comes in, and all of a sudden it is decision time for Kevin Cash. Because Robbie Ray, even this season when he led the majors in walks and like struggled with his command, still just crushed lefties, as he has throughout his entire career. So when those lefties are coming up, does Kevin Cash go to his bench? And does he try to get the platoon advantage in the 4th inning or in the 5th inning? That is the choice he has to make, is do I go platoon versus Robbie Ray, or do I hang on to this move for later in the game? Because if he makes that move in the 4th or 5th inning, Charlie Montoya was saying, great. Now you've got a right-hander in the game. And hey, I got Nate Pearson in my bullpen who is like throwing 101 right now. I also have Anthony Bass and Rafael Delis, and I can match up against those guys later in the game, and you don't have a move to make anymore. So it does force Kevin Cash to make some decisions. I think that is the design here, is Shoemaker to Ray. You hope those guys get you through like 5.5 or 6, right? If they get you through 5 1/3 or 5 2/3, and you have to bring in AJ Cole to get you out of a jam like he did against the Yankees last week, that's fine. And then you're turning it over to Nate Pearson for 2 innings, or if it's you really like the matchup of Delisa's splitter against some of those Rays hitters, who, by the way, the Rays don't do great against splitters, or if you like the matchup with Anthony Bass's slider against a certain guy, could even be Ross Stripling. I mean, like it's I just think that you can't get too bogged down in game one is Matt Shoemaker's game. Really, like the first 3 innings are Matt Shoemaker's ideally, but it might not even necessarily get there.
That's right. And if he struggles, they'll have someone up early. It might not even be 3. And hopefully for the Blue Jays and for Shoemaker, it'll be a bit longer than that. But I agree with the game plan that you outlined right there. I think that's what we're going to see. And, speaking of that dilemma that Kevin Cash will face, I'm kind of guessing, because so many of their best hitters are left-handed, I'm kind of guessing that when Robbie Ray comes in, I do think it'll be Robbie Ray. I'm guessing that at that point, he sticks with them. He says, all right, we're going to go with you guys. And so that puts the pressure on those Rays hitters left on left against Ray to be patient. And I guarantee in their hitters meetings that they had today, that they're having tomorrow before that game, if we're well aware of this possibility, they've thought this through as well. And so they know that Robbie Ray might be coming in. They'll be looking at video. Okay, what does it look like? What kinds of pitches do we need to be on the lookout for? Take, because this guy does walk a lot of hitters.
A couple of your comments I want to sneak in here. Tiltman says, I don't mind it because Shoemaker is great against lefties and the Rays have a lot of lefties. Shoemaker is pretty strong against both sides of the platoon. Like he's pretty much even, but Taijuan Walker has gotten hit by lefties this season. So, I mean, I think Taijuan Walker in game 1 of this series wouldn't have been a great fit for that reason. Over the course of his career, Walker's been more even, although lefties still hit him a bit better. But like this year, for whatever reason, he has been susceptible to lefties. Small sample. It's kind of recent. It's kind of noisy. Like who knows what was going on, but you take what you have in front of you. And also, by the way, this is a bit of an aside, but like, and I just wrote like 1,500 words on this decision. I'm looking at lefty, righty splits and how Shoemaker's done against the Rays and, pitch profiles and this, that, and the other. The Toronto Blue Jays are not looking at any of those numbers. They aren't looking at Fangraphs. They aren't looking at Baseball Reference. They aren't thinking about lefty, righty. Like the data they are relying on is so much more advanced than anything we have access to. Like they are thinking about swing planes and they're thinking about areas of the zone that certain hitters struggle with and areas of the zone that their pitchers like to attack. They are thinking about spin rates and they are thinking about how pitches move and movement profiles that Tampa Bay hitters struggle against. Like it's almost futile to like try to understand the decision making based on the information that we have, because a lot of times it's not going to line up because the information the Blue Jays are using is just different than what we have access to. It doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean that they're correct. It doesn't mean that the results are going to follow through. But I just think that their process is sort of beyond, what you're going to be able to find by just like going to the Fangraphs splits page.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think, I can almost hear some people watching thinking like, man, like they're making it too complicated for themselves. Like it's just baseball. And I think there is an aspect of that. I think there's an aspect of this, whether it's with, the catching, which we'll talk to Joe Siddall about the catching later on, whether it's with the offense, whether it's with the pitching, there's an element where you got to keep the big picture in mind here. I mean, you need to make sure that you are putting your best guys out there. Like, don't let a matchup overtake the fact that, if you really believe in the talent, then that's got to inform the decision too. But absolutely, the data has to be a big part of these decisions. It is, all season long, it might not be as apparent, but this data and this information is there all the time.
There was another comment in there that said, so it's a bullpen day and get ready for some quote unquote bullpen days, and you can call them that. Really, it's using your entire pitching staff in whichever way is possible. It's just getting 27 outs in whichever way. Like, it doesn't matter who gets them and when. It matters that you have 27 at the end of the game and you have scored more runs than the other team. That's what matters. And unless you are the Houston Astros of last season and you're throwing out like 3 future Hall of Fame starting pitchers, you probably don't have a starting staff deep enough in order to just throw out guys who are going to go 7 and 8 innings. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of like quote unquote bullpen days, but it's really just pitching staff days. When it comes to scoring runs, as I mentioned, how do you think the Blue Jays lineup matches up against the Rays? They're going to get Snell in game 1. They're going to get Glasnow in game 2. If there's a game 3, they're going to get Morton. And out of the bullpen after Snell and Glasnow, they are going to get like a clown car of dudes who all throw from like different slots and with like different little hitches in their delivery, and they're all funky and weird. But the commonality is that the ball comes out of their hand at a pretty high velocity, and they're spinning spins that are really at a rather high rate of speed. So how do you feel the Blue Jays match up against Rays pitching?
It's a tough matchup, but I mean, this is October baseball. I mean, the Yankees tomorrow are facing Shane Bieber. Cleveland has to face Garrett Cole. I mean, it's just what you have to deal with if you're in October. I don't think these are easy matchups. I think, you're talking about Snell, Glasnow, Morton. These guys are really good pitchers. And as you said, there are layers and waves of pitching beyond that. I think at the same time, I mean, the Blue Jays faced some good pitching this year. They faced, DeGrom, they faced Cole, they faced a lot of really good pitchers, and they still were, I think it was 11th in Major League Baseball when it came to offense. So this is a team that can hit. And I actually think they're a top 10 offense, really, when it comes to, a team that missed Bo Bichette for a bunch of the year, a team that didn't have Alejandro Kirk for, almost all of the year, a team that missed Teoscar Hernandez for big stretches. I think this lineup, when healthy, which it mostly is now, pending the status of Rowdy Tellez, I think this lineup should do a lot of damage against anybody. So it's tough. I mean, and it's one game. Who knows? Or 2-3 games, they could go over the series. But I think all things being equal, based on everything we know, this lineup should be a strength. I mean, if they're going to win, that the lineup has to contribute. This is a big strength for this team, I think.
It almost flew under the radar a little bit because I looked it up this morning and I was like, wow, the Toronto Blue Jays had 7 batters qualify for the batting title with an OPS plus of 114 or higher. That's
Really?
7 guys at 114 or higher qualifying for the batting title. And Travis Shaw is number 8 at 95 OPS plus. So OPS plus basically is a measure that just normalizes OPS to 100. So if you are 114, you're 14% better than league average. That's what Randall Grichuk was. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is 115, Biggio 122, Bichette 127, Gurriel 138, Tellez 139, Teoscar Hernandez 146, 46% better than league average. The Blue Jays have above league average hitting, and when they are healthy, which has kind of been the problem this year because like they've either been without Bichette or without Tellez or without Hernandez, or Guerrero's been slumping. Like they haven't all been together and firing on all cylinders at the same time. But the Blue Jays can fill out a pretty deep lineup if they have everybody healthy. And I just think the plate approach is what it is going to be for the Blue Jays in this series. Like they're going to have to be patient. They're going to have to be selective. They're going to have to be tenacious and fouling off like tough pitches. They're going to have to be like almost in like 2-strike approach from pitch one. Like they're just going to have to be locked in. Like you cannot give away plate appearances against the Snell. You cannot give away plate appearances against the Glasnow. Like you need to be running up pitch counts, seeing a lot of pitches, and working your way to mistakes, because that's what every hitter feasts on, is that like middle in fastball that the pitcher was trying to get in and left on the plate. And because you kind of understood what the pitcher was trying to do, you were ready for it. And because you let the ball travel and you were on time, you were able to get to your bat to it. Like I think that's what it's going to be. Is it's going to be the plate approach of this lineup that allows them to sort of unlock a lot of the power that they obviously have.
Yeah, they've got the power, right? You mentioned those names, and I think Kirk is going to be really interesting to watch. They've got, even more like role player type guys like a Joe Panic or Travis Shaw. This is a series where, because they have a 28-man roster too, and we haven't seen the exact composition of it, the Jays have until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning to finalize that. But because they do have a bigger roster and it's a short series, they might need as few as 13 pitchers. Now, I don't think anyone expects them to go to 13 pitchers, but it might be 14, it might be 15. That allows for a bigger bench. And with a bigger bench, that allows for more pinch hitting, more pinch running. It just gives Montoyo more flexibility late in games, which hopefully he uses. I mean, say they get to extra innings, use VR as a pinch runner, say they have Kirk on base in the bottom or in the top of the 9th inning. Well, you're pinch running right there, I hope, or Vladdy, like get them out of there. Like this is why you have a big bench. Use it.
So speaking of that bench and speaking of Blue Jays hitters, we did not speak of the individual who some people would say was the best Blue Jays hitter of all time, in Alejandro Kirk, who in his first 2 weeks in the majors just like blew everybody away. We got a question from Connor L, who asks, since Shoemaker is starting and not Ryu, does Kirk start at catcher in game 1? Ben.
So I think Jansen will still start. So Charlie said that Vladdy's going to start at first. That opens up DH. Kirk, I think, will be in the lineup. I think Kirk will be the DH in game 1. I think we see Jansen catch. What do you think, Arden?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Kirk DHs. I think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. plays first base, and I think Jansen catches. Or I think Kirk DHs. I don't think that Alejandro Kirk should catch in this series. This is just my opinion. The Blue Jays have said directly that they have no trepidation in starting him behind the plate, even though he has 55 innings at the big league level and all of his other experiences at high A, and it was 14 months ago. They've said they've seen enough. Personally, I have not. And I think that there is like such a such a fineness required of a catcher in the postseason when it comes to game calling, when it comes to pitcher tempo, when it comes to reading swings, when it comes to controlling the running game, when it comes to which signs that you're putting down and letting Matt Shoemaker be in a rhythm and not have to be like shaking repeatedly on the mound and going sign to sign. Like I just think that Alejandro Kirk's on this team to hit. He's on this team because they needed a bat. And I think that Danny Jansen's experience is the reason why, despite the fact he hasn't had the offensive season he would have liked to me, he needs to be behind the plate for every game of this series.
Well, I think we'll see him game one. I think we'll definitely see him game two when Ryu catch it, or when Ryu is there. And then I guess it kind of depends on where things go, how the series looks. I mean, if it's 1-1, are you starting Kirk? You're probably sticking with Jansen. So it might be Jansen every game.
Would you give Kirk a rep behind the plate in this series?
I wouldn't hesitate to. Like today, for example, and this is, so given the composition of their team, I probably wouldn't in game one. Let's say they had a better right-handed bench bat. Let's say Brandon Drury had a really good year, okay? Which he didn't. So let's say that Drury is an appealing option. You have him on the bench. Well, then you use him as your DH and you have Kirk catch, and then you're maximizing against the left-hander. You're maximizing your right-handed bats. But in this situation, that's not really the case.
I have not been super impressed with Alejandro Kirk behind the plate yet. You seem to be somewhat on the fence. I am very curious to know what Joe Siddall thinks. Joe Siddall actually caught at the big league level. So let's find out how Joe Siddall feels about young Alejandro Kirk and some of the decisions Blue Jays are going to have to make heading into this wild card series with the Tampa Bay Rays. Well, Ben and I have been having so much fun debating Alejandro Kirk's brief MLB debut and what role he might play on the postseason roster that we decided to talk to a guy who actually played the position in the big leagues. Joe Siddall is here to give us a catcher's perspective on what we've seen from young Alejandro Kirk. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. That is the question. What have you seen from Alejandro Kirk behind the plate, and what are your impressions thus far of him defensively as a catcher?
Well, first and foremost, guys, I think you have to – it's all relative. As a 21-year-old, I cannot even imagine what he is going through right now, just getting called up to the big leagues after playing in high A ball last year, and now he's going to the postseason. So you put those two things together, there is going to be a lot on his plate. On the plus side, it seems like a kid that doesn't have a whole lot of things bothering him. He seems to have that real slow heart rate, as people refer to, and he does not let the game speed up on him. But he's handled himself well enough behind the plate for me to earn a start if that's the direction the Blue Jays go. Now, at the plate in the batter's box, I'll take him any day of the week. I think he's a very good hitter, and I say that because he can handle a pretty good fastball, and that's one thing the Blue Jays struggle with. So I think that bat could come in handy, especially in a series against the Rays with a lot of hard throwers.
You mentioned this with Kirk, and it's actually stood out to me with Danny Jansen a bit at times as well. It's just the tempo of the game calling and maybe not always being on the same page as pitchers. We've seen Hyun-Jin Ryu in a few of his starts now kind of shaking his head, having to go over signs again, having to step off. How much of an impact do you think that has had and can have on a pitcher's tempo? And do you think it's just information overload, or is there something else going on here for why we haven't always seen catchers on the same page as Blue Jays pitchers this season?
Arden, there's a lot at play right there in that question. Let's try to delve into it. Hyun-Jin Ryu, I don't know him very well. I don't know how his emotional level is throughout the course of the game. It's hard to see anything bothering him. So is it bothering him? Really hard to say that it is because he doesn't show it, but it has to be. I know as a catcher for so many years, the biggest strength you can have back there is the trust of your pitchers. And you gain that trust by understanding what the hitter's weaknesses are, what your pitcher's strengths are, how you sequence pitches. And when you're putting the fingers down and your pitcher is just right in tune with you, it's the best thing in the world for any pitcher. I don't think there's a pitcher alive that won't agree with that, because you put the fingers down, you talked about that tempo and that timing where they can continue pitch at their pace. And anytime a pitcher can continue to stay in his rhythm, it's going to make him feel better. And we know psychology 101, if you feel better, you're probably going to do better. So with Ryu, it's really difficult. I don't envy the job Danny Jansen has had this year catching him. And I say that because while Ryu looks like a great guy to catch because he's so good, the other thing is that he's so unpredictable. So it's like when you throw that cutter inside to a right-handed hitter and then you want to double up and come back in it, but he's saying no. And then right away I think, okay, so he must want to go change away. And Danny puts down the changeup and he says no. And he's, okay, he must want to throw the slow curveball. And Ryu says no. It has to be a real challenge for Danny because Ryu can do, literally, he can throw any pitch in any count and I think have the utmost confidence in that. So it takes a long time and a lot of experience with a pitcher to really get on that same page. Now, what's a long time? Is it 5 starts? Is it 10 starts? Should he be there by now? I think so, because it's not only done during the game. These are things that are done sitting in the clubhouse at your locker together, in the lunchroom together. You're talking, you're constantly talking. And this probably should have started way back in February in spring training, where these conversations are endless about what you like to do in certain situations. Well, he'll explain it. If I have a left-handed hitter that's a pull type guy, I want to do this. And you go over every possible scenario so that you can be prepared for almost any situation. It's not as easy as it sounds, and that's why I don't envy Danny's position. But when we start seeing it with other guys on the staff, that's when throughout the course of the season, I was getting concerned and thinking, these guys just aren't on the same page. And I loved what you just asked me when you said information overload. I wish I knew exactly how the process is going down with the Blue Jays. And we're seeing it across baseball. The catchers have their wristbands. They're constantly peeking at them. But when I was a catcher, we spent so much time in between innings in the dugout. And it was all, your prep was all done before the game. You went over the hitters, your pitcher talked, your pitching coach talked. We all went over how we're going to attack guys. Now, I think, and I say this because I don't know it to be true, but there is so much information from not just what pitches you might throw in certain situations, not just what a hitter might do with 2 strikes that he may chase, not that he might be a guy that likes to swing at the first pitch a lot. It's gone way beyond that. It's talking about their swing planes now and matching the pitch planes. And because it's gone so deep and so far, I really think sometimes when I'm watching the games, I'm looking at Danny Jansen and he's thinking, where do I go now? It's like you just immediately think, where am I going? And you're looking at your wristband. And all of that thinking, I think, can take away from your natural reaction to what's happening in front of you. Read the bats. The hitter tells you a lot of information. And I think that's the one thing that gets taken away from you with what I think is a lot of information being hammered into these guys.
Here's a stat we don't talk about much in this era of baseball: stolen bases. Tampa Bay Rays have the 6th most stolen bases in baseball this season. I'm curious, Joe, if you think that'll be a factor in this series, if you think maybe it could be something we're not talking about enough coming into it, and just how you rate Danny Jansen and Alejandro Kirk at controlling the running game.
I love that topic, Arden. I think you've hit something, you're right, that a lot of people aren't talking about because it's kind of gone by the wayside in this game. And how many times you guys have probably talked about it, how the Rays operate. They zig when the rest of the industry is zagging. Well, guess what? They're saying we could take advantage of some things. And the Blue Jays have been good in that regard too, not stealing as many, but they've been very efficient. They're smart about it. And that's what the Rays have done too. They run the bases very well in general. They're going to take extra bases, and the Blue Jays defense better be ready because they know the defense has not been great all season long. But I think when you look at what they do in the base pass, speed is a factor. And when I look at Kirk and Jansen behind the plate, Danny was okay last year, and he's been okay this year. Kirk is, again, that one knee thing drives me nuts that he's trying to throw to second base on one knee. He doesn't have the arm strength for it. I think it's absolutely ridiculous, but that's a conversation probably for another day. But it's going to be an issue. And as a catcher, the pitchers have to help them out, and they have to help them out by holding runners better. And the way you hold runners better is by changing up your times when you come set. Maybe you come to set 1,001, deliver the ball home. Maybe you come set, and before you even finish coming set, you fire over to first. Maybe next time you 1,001, 1,002, and hold, and then throw home. You have to do those things because it's simple math, guys. A pop time for a catcher and the delivery to the plate by the pitcher is simple math. And if your pitcher's going to be 1.5 to the plate, you basically don't have a chance for any decent base runner because most catchers are going to be around 2 seconds with their pop time. That's releasing the ball after it hits their mitt and getting it down to second base. So I always joked, I said, if pitcher's 1.5 and I'm 2, that's 3.5, and a decent base runner's 3.3, 3.4, you're not getting anybody. So they have to do a good job with their time to the plate, but more importantly, with how they hold those runners on, because the length of the lead is important, but also the jump is important. And those things can be altered if your pitcher gives you a little help, because as a catcher, you just ask for a chance. And that's what Jansen and Kirk, the way they are right now. You asked about the way they throw and the release. I think both of their arm strengths are very average. The releases are very average, so they need some help from their pitchers. And Arden, I think you're right on. It's something to watch in this series, because if the Rays catch on to that, and I think they will because they're aggressive, it might turn into a track meet, and that won't be good for the Blue Jays.
Joe, the insight is tremendous as always. Looking forward to hearing it on the broadcast with Buck, and can't thank you enough for taking the time today, man. Thank you.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. Anytime you want to talk catching, it gets me fired up.
Thanks, Joe.
Take care.
Man, Joe is so good at what he does. Thanks to him for joining us here on ATL Live. Thanks to all of you for continuing to leave your comments on YouTube. You can continue to do so. Props to my man Hamish, who actually asked us before we asked Joe Siddall whether we thought the running game would be a problem for the Blue Jays in this series. And I really do wonder if it will be. Joe Siddall does as well. That is one of the under the radar things to kind of keep an eye on throughout this series as the Blue Jays play the Tampa Bay Rays. But Ben, imagine being the Tampa Bay Rays and imagine winning 40 games, winning the American League outright better than every other team, and still having to compete in a 3-game series in order to get to the next round of the postseason. To me, like, that is the biggest issue with this October and with this postseason format, is the teams like the Rays and the Dodgers, the only advantage, quote unquote, that they have is the 3-game wildcard series is played in their ballpark.
And that's such a small advantage in a year where you don't have any fans in attendance. I mean, it does feel unfair. And it really is a good year to be an underdog. It's a good year to be a team that maybe snuck in. Not only the Blue Jays, you think about teams like the Astros, I believe the Brewers were the other team that's under 500, and they made it to the playoffs. I mean, it does feel a little bit unfair. Now the Brewers play the Dodgers. The Dodgers are this power team. I mean, that's even more of a mismatch than the Blue Jays and the Rays. So it is what it is this year. I think under the circumstances of the pandemic and everything that's been happening, everyone understands this year is unique. But if you start looking ahead to what makes sense in Major League Baseball, I mean, this is not a sustainable model in my view.
Well, so no Toronto Blue Jays fan should be complaining about expanded playoffs, because the Blue Jays qualify as the 8th team in the American League. So I think the Blue Jays fans have to be happy with this particular set of circumstances. What I would advocate for, because I am in favor of playoffs that are larger than the previous format, but smaller than this one, I would advocate for 7 teams per league, and then just have tiered incentives. So if you have 7 teams per league, and you say you have 7 teams in the American League and you still have the 3 divisions, your 3 division winners get a bye to the divisional series. They're gone. And then you've got 4 teams. So you've got the 3 second place finishers in each division, plus 1, quote unquote, wild card team, like best of the rest. So the best 3rd place record out of the rest of the league. And those 4 teams, like, you could do it a few different ways, right? Like, you could do round robin style, you could do 2-3 game, wild card series. Like, you could find a way to make it happen, to have them then play and have advantages for the higher finishers among those 4 to move on to the next round. And obviously you would need 3 teams to come out of that sort of 4-team, like, quote unquote, tourney or whatever. Like, you would have to kind of figure out the logistics of it, and I obviously have not. But I think that makes more sense, and that's what I would advocate for going forward, because now that the cat's out of the bag and the can of worms has been opened with expanded postseason, and everyone has realized how much more revenue there is there, and like how much more interest it creates for the game, and how many more teams stay competitive throughout the regular season, I don't think it's going anywhere. I just think it needs to be modified.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's an interesting idea. To me, I would go a little bit tighter. Like, I would go to 6 per league, for a total of 12 out of the 30 teams. And here's how I would do it. I would do the same thing as you. I would have the 3 division winners advance. They are in the division series. So that incentivizes teams like the Dodgers and Rays and Yankees to play hard until the end. You're not just, you're not just playing out the string. So that adds intrigue. And I think that's a good thing. Then with the remaining 3 teams per league, I would have the 5 and 6 seeds play each other 1-game playoff, final, first day after the regular season, winner take all. Then winner of that goes on to play the 4 seed. And this team has to travel. The 4 seed hosts the game. They have to travel. They have to go overnight flight, red eye. Hopefully it's like coast to coast. So they're just like destroyed. They're totally tired.
And then they play
winter
stand by the
tie.
side of the highway with their thumbs out.
They can still have a nice, 5-star hotel experience. But they are going to be tired. Then they get there. They play a winner take all game. They play for the right to face the number 1 seed. So it is you really are incentivizing teams to win your division, but at the same time, you have expanded playoffs.
We are mad scientists in our baseball lab here with what we're doing. The more I think about it, the more I like the idea of a 4-team sort of wild card round robin at neutral site. We've already gone to the neutral site idea anyway. And I wonder if the neutral site thing is here to stay, like vaccine or not. I just do think it kind of makes sense. And there are other sports that use neutral sites. So I wonder if that would make sense just to limit the travel. And so that, you're not creating any of these sort of nightmare scenarios that you are. But speaking of mad scientists, the Blue Jays have been a bit of mad scientists with their bullpen, and Ryan Borucki has been right at the forefront of that. Converted starter, came into the season trying to, building up innings, thinking he's going to pitch as starting pitcher. All of a sudden he's pitching out of the bullpen. He's pitching bulk outings. He's coming into short stints as, a lefty specialist. Like, he's kind of doing it all. And I think he's going to have a huge role to play in this Tampa Bay Rays series. You mentioned all the dangerous lefties in that lineup. I think that Robbie Ray and Ryan Borucki are going to be very, very big weapons for the Toronto Blue Jays. And Ryan Borucki is kind enough to join us. Well, join me and Shai, who had a chance to speak to him about his season and how he's hoping to keep it going forward. Here's Ryan Borucki. Ryan Borucki's with us. Ryan, thanks so much for your time. Just thinking about the day that you guys clinched in Buffalo and getting to celebrate that accomplishment. You came up through this system with a lot of guys who are celebrating with you, right? Think about Jordan Romano and Dane Jansen, Bo, Cavan, Jonathan Davis. How gratifying is it to have that payoff of a clinching moment with some of the guys you've been really grinding it out with for years?
I had to kind of, sometimes when I was hugging certain guys, I had to kind of hold back. Like, I felt like I was starting to tear up a little bit, because it's like the dog days of being in the minor leagues together, starting in the GCL and working all the way through all the levels. And when I really started to have to like hold it back was with John Schneider. I mean, I was very lucky. I got to play for him 6 years in a row, and me and him just came up together. Every level I moved up, he was up, the manager. And until in 18, that was the last time he didn't manage me. And it was just a lot of emotions just coming over me, because I've been in this organization since 2012, and a lot of these guys, 2012, 2013, 14 drafts. And I've watched everybody come through this system and the struggles and the successes that they all have had throughout their road. And it's cool. Just everyone has their own journey, and it's been a lot of fun just watching, and just being able to clinch it in the big leagues. It's a dream come true.
Ryan, you mentioned the journey, and obviously your own one was filled with lots of adversity and lots of ups and downs. To have been able to contribute in a meaningful way to a team that's gotten to the postseason, how gratifying is that to be able to really overcome a lot of the things that you faced?
Yeah, it was going into this year. I mean, I really didn't know what my role was going to be to help this team. And my biggest goal was just staying healthy and just being able to pitch again and just enjoying every moment of it. And it's the role that I came into it. I've really enjoyed just coming into the bullpen. We got a great group of guys down in the bullpen, and they've made it so make me so comfortable just being a starter, and just like realizing when I need days off and things like that. Just, we pick each other up down there, and it's been a lot of fun, and just being able to help this team win has just been fun as a whole, just because no one really expected us to be in the playoffs. I said it from day one. I had a feeling in summer camp we were going to do something special, and it's fun that all that hard work that all the guys put in this year really has paid off.
I mean, you've been a starter your entire life, throughout your whole career, and then you get thrown into that new role, like you said. I think a lot of people think it's maybe easier than it is. What makes it challenging that someone that's not in your shoes maybe wouldn't appreciate watching from afar?
I think it's just the fact of I've never really been put into a situation of like leverage innings. I mean, those coming into games when it's a 1-run game in the 6th, 7th, 8th against Boston, I came in the 9th with a winning run on. I've never done that before. And it's a different mental grind to it because every pitch really matters. You give up a couple runs in the first inning as a starter, you still got the whole game for the boys to get some runs behind you, and just then you can keep going. But when it comes down to those make or break pitches, it's a completely different mindset. And other than that, it took a little bit for my arm just to bounce back here and there, but it's surprising how fast your arm kind of, when you're throwing every other day and stuff, back-to-back games, how your arm really starts to figure it out and bouncing back. And that was my big worry into the season coming into it, because I didn't really know how my arm was going to react. And it's been great. And I'm just happy that I was able to stay healthy and help this team as much as I could.
Ryan, have you enjoyed this maybe more than you might have thought you would have? And, in your mind, do you still have aspirations to start, or do you think you've maybe found a little bit of a niche for yourself?
It's one of those things where I want to be a starter, and I would love to be a starter. I feel like I can be a successful starter in the big leagues, but this isn't a bad backup plan. I've really enjoyed just coming out of the bullpen, coming out with my best stuff, and just being in the game. It's completely different. The thing that I love the most about the bullpen is you're checked in, like you're locked in every single game, because you never know when you might pitch. As a starter, you got those 4 days when you're sitting there, and as a starter, it's kind of boring sometimes when you're watching, especially when your team's struggling. It's like you're just waiting for that every 5th day to come, and then you kind of check out for 4. But as a bullpen guy, you're in every game, and you're living and dying with every pitch. And when you go out there, when you got guys with their runs out there, you want to try to keep those runners from scoring because you care about the guy next to you and stuff like that. So it's been good. Either way, like I said, the whole year, whatever position they tell me to go in, I'm going to just do the best that I can and just embrace it.
We talk about that leverage in the regular season. I can only imagine what it's going to be like in the postseason if you have to encounter one of those situations where you come in with runners on, or, you come in with trying to protect a 1-run lead. If you allowed yourself to kind of think about, what that's going to feel like, and just kind of what sort of emotions you're going to have to process getting ready to come into those situations. Yeah.
Since we've clinched, I've really just been focusing on these next couple games, finishing off the season, and then when it comes to playoff, when it comes to that, those leverage innings, I probably know depending on who we face, I'm probably going to be being used in certain situations when it comes to leverage stuff. So I just really been focusing on just trying to really focus on breathing and just staying calm, and just instead of letting the moment get to me, just slow everything down and just make pitches. I feel like when it comes, I've never been in the playoffs. I've done it a couple times in the minor leagues, but it's just all about just don't let the moment get the best of you, So I'm really just going to be focused on slowing the game down and just taking some extra breaths that I might need out there.
Ryan, when you think about the journey, just the team has gone through this season, all the different accommodations you guys have had to make to play in the midst of a pandemic, all the different challenges that you guys have overcome. For you, from that standpoint, what will you take from this season? What will you really remember of all the upheaval that this team has had to deal with?
I think it's just the fact that we just had that mentality of where it's kind of like high school baseball or travel baseball, be like, all right, we'll show up here and go play. And I feel like guys really, we could have just had the mentality that the cards are against us, everything's working against us, and we could have had that mentality, and we could have just packed it in, played these 60 games, went home, but nobody really did that, and the guys really stuck together, and we really just wanted to compete, and that's how it's coming through the minor leagues. We've always just liked competing and playing with each other, and it's fun when you get to look at everybody, all the successes that everyone has had, and it's been an unbelievable year, and we always make a joke. I don't know if Sportsnet does this, but they're going to make a 30 for 30 for us if we win the World Series, because I feel like this is a pretty special story and a special group of guys.
Yeah, Shai and I have already reserved the residual rights on that.
Perfect.
One.
Perfect.
it's not just the guys who've been here since day one, right? It's the guys who came in midway, right? Like Ross Stripling and Robbie Ray and Taiwan Walker. I mean, what have those guys what have you been able to learn from them, and how have they kind of gelled with a group that had quite a bit established before they got here?
I mean, you couldn't pick three of those four guys that came in here like better guys. Like they just came right in, fit right in with everybody. They could have been mad that they got traded and stuff, but I feel like they were just ready to come here and make a playoff push with us. And I mean, those four guys that we got are, I mean, unbelievable guys, humans, and just nothing but nice. Robbie, Strip, Taiwan, like the pitching staff, like they just stepped right into their roles and we're just trying to help. You know what I mean? Guys have been in playoff positions, Strip, Robbie, I think all three of them have been in position like playoff pushes before. So they just bring that little bit of experience that a lot of us don't have. These younger guys don't have when we're experienced for the first time. So they kind of have that calmness to it of, all right, we're going to be good. Even when we went into that skid, everyone stayed positive and we weren't going into panic mode. And they just really just helped us turn this thing around. And hopefully we can go into the postseason with some momentum, win these next couple games. And then wherever the cards lie, we're going to just go with it.
Since we are getting ready for the postseason, Ryan, I'm wondering if you can think back to some of your favorite memories from being a fan of watching the postseason, some special moments that you kind of think back, and when you pictured yourself in October, that's the kind of role that you'd love to see yourself in.
I mean, I've always been in awe of like when the teams start clinching and they're partying with their friend, like with their buddies and everybody. That was always been my dream since day one of just watching baseball. It just looked like so much fun. And obviously postseason wise, like I'm from Chicago. I've had the luxury of both teams from Chicago winning a World Series in my lifetime. And it was cool. It was like, obviously I was a huge White Sox fan. I remember living and dying with every pitch when the White Sox won that World Series. And even with the Cubs, even though I wasn't really rooting for them, but I just enjoyed really good baseball. And the postseason is just a different animal. Obviously we would love for it to have that same experience, but again, there's still going to be, even without fans, it's still going to have that same feel. Because I feel like now it's more of, instead of like living off the fans and feeding off that stuff, it's really just playing for one another, and we're just going out there, going to battle for each other.
Looking forward to watching you go out and do that, man. Thank you so much for your time today. Good luck.
I appreciate it, guys.
That is a guy who you were going to see pitching in a very big spot in this series. I feel very confident saying that. Thanks to Ryan Borucki for joining us, and thanks to Shai for coming in on the interview with him. Loving your comments on YouTube. We're seeing the discussion about the Blue Jays lineup. It's heated, I am told, by our producer Graham Campbell. So Ben, maybe we can just chat a little bit about how we expect this lineup to be constructed. We don't know the roster yet. We're going to find out tomorrow. We do expect the Blue Jays are going to carry a couple extra position players because you just don't need as many pitchers in a 3-game series as you might in a typical playoff series. Like, you're not going to see a Tanner Roark on this roster. I know TJ Zoik's pitched very well recently, but I think he's probably up against it. Like, he's probably right on that cusp. It's going to be interesting to see like what the roster exactly looks like, but we can kind of look at that game 1 against Blake Snell and kind of work our way around the diamond and see that behind the plate, we're expecting to have Danny Jansen. At DH, we're expecting Alejandro Kirk. First base, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Your outfield is Randall Grichuk, Teoscar Hernandez, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Teoscar in right and Grichuk in center, I should say. Your shortstop's obviously Bo Bichette. So now we're down to 2 positions, second and third. And I haven't said the name Kevin Biggio yet. So Kevin Biggio is going to be in the lineup, and he's going to be playing one of those 2 positions, and he's capable of playing either or. So really, it comes down to who you want in this lineup, Ben, against the lefty Blake Snell. Is it Travis Shaw? Is it Joe Panik? Or is it someone like Jonathan VR?
To me, and a great discussion. It's really interesting. And so thanks to everyone for contributing to it. But to me, I think you want VR on the bench. He hasn't hit well this year, and I think he does add value as a late game speed option. So I think you keep him there. Then it comes down to Shaw versus Panik. Panik has hit lefties really well this year. Shaw has struggled to hit lefties his whole career. So I would go with Panik and have Biggio play third.
That would be interesting. Panic has had some like really nice plate appearances down the stretch for the Blue Jays, especially through basically the entire month of September. Like, he's seeing a lot of pitches, fouling off a lot of pitches. Like, he's never a guy who's going to have a lot of pop, right? Like, he's never a guy who's going to leave the yard a lot. But in this lineup, hitting 8th or 9th, being able to see like 5 pitches, 6 pitches in a plate appearance, being an obvious threat to draw a walk, like, it's a good fit there. So I tend to agree with you unless the Blue Jays see something in the matchup with, Shaw and Snell. I think defensively, Panic would be the better option over Shaw at third base. You could also put Biggio at third base and have Panic at second. You're going to want good defense behind Matt Shoemaker because he does strike some guys out, but you're looking at a lot of ground balls. It's the same thing in game 2 with Hyun-Jin Ryu. A lot of ground balls. Hyun-Jin Ryu's strikeouts are actually up this year. His peripherals are really impressive. Like, he's up over 9 Ks per 9, but he's still a guy who pitches the soft contact and who the ball is in play for. So we have certainly seen some defensive adventures for the Blue Jays throughout this season, some mental lapses, some physical errors, and those are things that are going to get really magnified in a series like this if they crop up again. And I think Joe Panic is just, a pretty good option around the infield. I would say Jonathan Villar's looked good lately, but I don't know about the entire body of work. So to me, it's also Joe Panic. The more I think about it and the more I talk, I kind of talk myself into the fact that I want to see a lot of Joe Panic in this series.
I like it.
What about, do you think Rowdy Tellez factors in? We kind of heard from Charlie Montoyo today that, he's going to take some swings around the bases, see how he feels. We weren't expecting him to be ready. But if he is on this roster, it does create a bit of a dilemma because he would probably be your DH. I don't know if he's ready to play the field yet. Even if he was playing the field at first, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. would be your DH. Then what happens with Alejandro Kirk? The decisions to be made, Ben, there are many.
There are. I mean, if Tellez is getting close to health, I mean, I think even if he's not healthy tomorrow at 9:59, when they have to hit send on that email to Major League Baseball, if you think he's going to be healthy by Thursday, then I think he's worth a roster spot because there's a situation where you pinch hit with him. I mean, he's obviously not going to be running a lot, but if you think you can get one good pinch hit at bat from Rowdy Tellez, I mean, I think that's worth it when you have 28 spots to play with. So I don't know where that discussion is going to lead. I do know the last time we asked Charlie about this, the days are a bit of a blur now, but I think it was Saturday maybe. And he said at that point, he was not expecting to see Tellez on the roster. So going off that, I'm not expecting to see it either, but it's an interesting one to watch.
A lot of interesting things to watch in the coming days as the Blue Jays get ready for this 3-game wild card series with the Tampa Bay Rays. And our Blue Jays postseason coverage starts tomorrow with Game 1 against the Rays. It is going to go at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on Sportsnet. As always, you can stream the game on Sportsnet now. Ben and I will be covering it along with our colleague Shai Davidi, of course. Tweeting. Ben's at B Nicholson-Smith. I'm at Arden Zwelling. Shai is at Shai Davidi. We'll be writing at sportsnet.ca. Ben and I are going to jump off of this feed and onto another to record a podcast at The Letters, which should be up tomorrow morning. Wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you subscribe to the podcast, just search for At The Letters, hit subscribe, and you will get our season preview on your device tomorrow morning. We're going to be having plenty of content here on YouTube and on Facebook. If you want to get that content right away, you should subscribe to Sportsnet's YouTube channel. Lots of interesting stuff coming your way from the team, including our fine producers who helped us out today, Graham Campbell and Steph Perret. I want to say a big thanks to them for putting this all together. A big thanks to you for watching, for commenting. Hey, the Blue Jays are in the playoffs. It might last just 48 hours. It might be 72 hours. They might do something crazy to move on to the divisional series. Who knows? But I think you should enjoy it and relish it and just enjoy this kind of fun, intense playoff baseball here in a year of 2020 when it's just nice to have a nice thing. So thanks so much for watching, for listening. For Ben Nicholson-Smith, I am Arden Zwelling. This has been Alive at The Letters.